Hello and welcome back to the final session of the virtual flower show. My name's Martin Fish and I'm trying to keep these exhibitors in order because they're an unruly lot at the best of time. Just to recap who we've got Lynne Dibley from Dibleys Nursery, Alec White from Primrose Hall Nursery, Mark Macdonald from Todds Botanics, Vicky Fox from Plantagogo, Mary and Terry Baker from the Botanic Nursery, Matt Soper from Hampshire Carnivorous Plants, and we've been joined for the last session by the one and only Steve Hickman from the Hoyland Plant Centre, our agapanthus specialist. The reason he's only joined us for the last one is because his fees are so expensive we can only afford the time he doubles up as a Richard Gere lookalike. So we're going to start with you, Steve, because we've had a few questions in on agapanthus. This one is from Michael. Michael would like to know, when do I divide and repot agapanthus?
Best time for dividing and repotting agapanthus is springtime, mid-March to mid-April. Compost well drained, a clean cut down the centre of the plant. If it's a large plant, leave it well the next day so the tissue's chance to dry, and then repot. Repot every 2 years.
Okay, jolly good. And he also asked on the back of that, while we'll do it now, is are they hardy in the north?
Well, there's two types of agapanthus. You've evergreen ones and herbaceous ones what die off in autumn. If you're going to plant in your border, you want the herbaceous ones which are hardy down to -15. If you're going to grow evergreens, must grow them in containers and protect in winter.
Okay, and then what are they hardy down to, Steve, the evergreens? Will they take a little bit of frost?
Evergreens, I would say down to about -5, but not for prolonged periods.
Okay, all right, good, thank you for that one. Right, a couple of quick houseplant questions. We'll try and do this. We've got a few questions, so we'll rattle through as many as we can. This is from Sean Greenfinger via Instagram. It's the best way to provide humidity for plants in your house, Lynne.
Well, you can put them over a gravel tray that you put water in. So as the water evaporates, it comes up around the foliage of the plants. That's one way, but make sure the plant isn't sitting in the water. It's above the water level, so you don't get wet roots at the same time. You could put them in a terrarium, so it's more or less sealed in. The other thing is to put plants in a bathroom where they're going to be more of a humid atmosphere than the rest of the house. I mean, certainly I put some plants which like a high humidity in the bathroom, and they love it.
Okay, so yeah, so they do need that humidity. They've got to think they're in the jungle. Very quickly, while we've got you, Lynne, this is another begonia question. This is from Steffo23. Is there a best time of the year to pot on begonias, and how often should you do it, please? It seems to me that they take a bit of time to settle in and recover after this has been done. So when do you do it, and should they do they sulk when you've repotted them, or should they just grow away with gusto?
Right, the best time would be at the beginning of the growing season, so mid-March to mid-May, something like that. So they're getting the new compost and they start growing into it. You should never repot begonias in the autumn where they're just going to sit in damp compost for the winter. So repot in the springtime, and what you're aiming to do is disturb the roots as little as possible. So you don't want to be rinsing off old compost and things like that, but make sure the plant is well rooted in that pot, and it actually does really need to be potted before you do it. So when you tip it out, it's got plenty of roots, and then just make a hollow in the new compost and drop the new plant in and disturb the roots as little as possible. And that should stop it from sulking. The other thing people do have a tendency to do is when you repot plants is sit the plant in water so that the compost gets wet. But what you can do is the compost can get just saturated. So when you repot, just dampen the compost, don't get it too wet. And that should stop it sulking, really.
Okay, all right. Good luck with that one then, Steffo, and hope you get more success with them. Alison Moore sent a question in on tree peonies. I have a peony which hasn't flowered, but I'm sure it's a tree peony. So there's a question there. She's not sure that it is a tree peony. Is there a way to tell whether or not it is a tree peony, Alex? So how do you basically differentiate between a herbaceous peony and a tree peony?
Well, Alison, the answer is that the tree peony ought to have a woody stem. Now, it might only be as thick as your little finger, but it should have a woody stem or several woody stems. The real acid test, of course, will be in October time, when all of the herbaceous peonies will have died down completely. The foliage will have gone brown and dead, and they'll be cut back to nothing. The tree peonies at that point will have lost their leaves, but they'll still have some kind of framework, which is woody. So that's how you tell. Tree peonies can be a little bit sulky, so they don't generally tend to flower reliably till they're 7 or 8 years old. So while they're juvenile, you will get flowers appearing from year to year, but it's not uncommon for them to flower for a year and then have a year or two of rest. So it might be that the plant is immature. It might be that it's not getting enough light. Tree peonies generally will tolerate a little bit more shade than herbaceous peonies, but they do still need plenty of light.
Okay, all right, so there you go, Victoria. You now know, Stephanie, you know how to tell the difference between them. Right, we've got a question here. Sorry, that was, I got that wrong, didn't I? But this is a question on Wisteria from Stephanie. And this is for, we'll give this to Terry and Mary, because I know you know about Wisteria. This is a plant that's, over the last 2 years, my Wisteria, that was planted 15 years ago and has previously grown well and has started to struggle. The leaves are yellowing and the branches are dying back, and it's making less growth than usual. When it started to happen last summer, it was suggested to me that it was lack of water, and since then, through the growing season, it's been watered once a week by giving it a good soaking around the roots, but the dieback is still continuing. Is it drought, or do you think it might be a disease? And if so, is there a remedy to save it? So it's obviously been struggling for a year or two, going yellow and dying back, not looking very good. Do you think it's the weather, or do you think it could be a disease?
I suspect that usually with Wisteria, they're planted tight up against the house, and that can be quite a dry environment. So I think the problem really started during one of these periods of hot, dry weather, when the plant just simply wasn't getting enough moisture. And watering a Wisteria once a week would be too much water. So I think it's a combination of not enough water to start with, and then too much water after that. And the roots system has just been damaged. I think the best thing to do, assuming it is a flowering plant and therefore it's properly grafted, make sure that it's pruned fairly hard, but not right to the ground. And try and put the damaged root system back in with the top, so that there's work for the root to do. Okay,
I think we may have just froze there a little bit, but I think we got the bulk of that there, Terry. All right, so persevere with it, I think, is probably the way, and don't overwater it, but make sure it's got enough to keep it going, and hopefully you'll start to see some more growth on there. Question here from Jill about an olive tree. Are you olive trees, Mark? Are you okay with olives? Yeah. It's doing okay. It's quite a big tree. They've had it for a number of years in a large pot. It seems to be fine, but the last few years it's developed lots and lots of very small spots on the leaves. Any idea what might be causing that?
It's likely to be peacock spot. It's quite a common complaint for olives grown in pots. Generally, it means they're not quite happy enough. There's two ways to deal with it. Give it a fairly hard prune, which you can still get away with doing now. There's enough time for it for the cut surfaces to reheal and for new growth to start. Clear away any of the infected leaves. If you look around the base of the pot, there'll probably be some dried up leaves. And have a better feeding regime. That's the main cause, is that it's not been getting enough food. Olives will survive in a pot being neglected, but they need some food and water to thrive. The other preventative method is to use a general black spot spray during the winter as a preventative spray. You can't use it during the season because it would burn the new growth, but during the winter, that's quite a good way of dealing with it. We do that as a matter of routine at the nursery. But generally, it means they're needing a bit more food than they're getting, and that's it, really.
Okay, and just we touched with Steve earlier on the hardiness of agapanthus. I mean, we all associate olives with the Mediterranean. How hardy are they? What temperatures will they take it to?
It depends a lot on their provenance. Most of the trees that come into the UK are coming up from Sicily, and they really won't cope with much frost at all because they've never really had cold weather during its life. The better trees come from colder regions of Spain where they've always had a frost.
Okay.
The coldest we've taken olives down to with survival is -18. We've got customers as far north as Inverness who are getting away with it in a sheltered spot. So they are pretty tough trees. We need to have a pretty exceptionally bad winter for them to be damaged. Back in 2010, we had sort of mass defoliation and we thought it was curtains for them, but they did all reshoot. They just took a season to recover. A lot of extra food and water that year, but they did recover.
I must admit, I'm in North Yorkshire. Mine survived -19 in 2010. It was in a cold polytunnel and I kept it fairly dry at the roots, not too wet. And it looked horrible in the spring, but as you say, pruning it recovered and it looks brilliant now.
Yeah.
So, okay, thank you for that one then, Mark. Vicky, a question here from Mel. I love Heucherella solar power and I want to put it on my patio in full sun. Will it be happy in that situation?
No, it's all of the... No, don't do it. No. All Heucherella really prefer part shade, or they're even going deep shade, especially solar power, because that's a lime leaf one as well, with like red splotches on it, and that one just has to have some shade. So no, tuck it behind something and shade it from sort of like 10 o'clock in the morning right the way through to about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it'll be fine. Full sun, it'll go hideously brown and you'll think it looks awful. You'll chop it off and it'll grow back in dull weather, and then the minute the sun comes again, it'll just all burn off again. So just don't do it.
You need some shade. And
Yes,
that's the case with all the yellow leaf ones, isn't it? They're better in a bit of shade.
It is, Martin. They lots of people really want to put them in the sun, but you just can't.
And that's it. Vicky says you can't, so don't do it. And that's it. No more
Sorry.
argument. Supplementary question here. Are Heucherellas tiny heucheras?
Oh, this is a question we get asked a lot, actually. It's because it sounds sort of cutie and it's like, oh, it's going to be tiny. But no, you can get massive Heucherellas and you can also get small ones. So the Heucherella is it's an intergeneric cross from the Tiarella and the Heuchera. Cross the two together and you get your Heucherella. And that's how you get your name.
There you go. All right, there you go. Thank you for that. Right, just time for a couple of quickies here. Matt, this is a question from Simon. He wants to start growing carnivorous plants. Which is the easiest pitcher plant to grow? So what can he get started with?
As far as pitcher plants are concerned, Sarracenia, always go for hybrids such as Catesby, Mitchelliana. They're easy, more vigorous, and tend to be more vigorous than the species. Again, with Nepenthes, if that's the sort of pitcher plant he's talking about, then I'd go for something like Cross Ventrata, which is another hybrid, easy, vigorous, great for a kitchen or bathroom, or as Lynne was saying, for a terrarium. They're fantastic in a terrarium indoors. Depends what pitcher plant he wants, but that covers Nepenthes and Sarracenia.
Okay, lovely. All right, there. So good luck with that, Simon. And then finally, because we're fast running out of time, Steve, we'll bring you in again just to end off. You do look like Richard Gere. You really do. You know, you're the silver fox there, yeah. You, as well as agapanthus, you are also a clivia specialist in amarine. And this is a question that we've had in from Dell about nerines and amarines. And he wants to know what is the difference between them. So what is the difference between a nerine and amarine?
An amarine, the quick description, it's like a nerine on steroids.
Oh, right.
It is. The flower's taller, the separate flowers are larger, the bulbs are twice the size of a normal nerine bulb. So, but the cultivation is exactly the same. The nose of the bulb must be out of the soil or compost, planted in a border. They're still harder to -10. They're just a giant form of a nerine, really. Available in 3 colours, dark pink, mid-pink and a pale pink. Exactly the same, well-drained compost and sunny position. They do tend to keep leaves through winter where the nerines don't. And you sometimes have to be patient a couple of years for them to sort of establish initially, and then they'll flower every year. September, October flowering.
Okay, that's good then. And are they a separate genus, or are they a cross? You know, because without amd, it implies, is it, you know, is it?
It's a hybrid between Nerine bowdenii,
Yeah,
the hardy nerine, and Amaryllis belladonna.
thought it might
It gets
be.
the size from the belladonna and the hardiness from the Nerine bowdenii.
Lovely. Right. Thank you very much for that. That sorted that one out then for Del. Lovely. Well, we're out of time now. So thank you to all our experts here, our exhibitors that you normally see at all the big flower shows across the UK, the independents and the RHS shows, putting on their fantastic displays. Sadly, not being able to do it this year, but hopefully they'll be back there next year so you can go and see them. But for now, on behalf of all the exhibitors, thank you very much. Hope we've answered your questions, but we are going to be back tomorrow with some more. So look out for those then. So bye-bye.